Hey guys, and welcome to today's video. And in today's video my mum is going to be telling you guys about when she found out about my heart condition and when I was born. If you don't know, I have hyperplastic left heart syndrome and it is CHD week. So what was it like when you found out about my heart condition?
So I was 31 and I found out I was pregnant with you, and 12-week scan was fine, which was great. So then of course we told people, and then in the December of 2001 I went for my 20-week scan, and we were kind of looking out for spina bifida because it runs in the family, so I was more concerned about that. Didn't really consider the heart at all. So I went for the scan at my local hospital, and in the scan was taking a long time, and then I was asked to go get up and go and get something to eat and walk about because you weren't cooperating and you weren't facing the sonographer, but they needed you to. So went and got a sandwich and walked around, and really didn't have any suspicions that anything was wrong at all, really not. And then went back in again after about half an hour, and they scanned again, and then brought another doctor in, and then that was when I was starting to think something's up here. Still not really having any clue at all. We knew seen the heartbeat, so we knew there was nothing like that, so we knew you were still alive in there. And then they told us that they suspected you had a condition called hyperplastic left heart syndrome, which we obviously never heard of.
Which is bad.
It is bad. I had a basic knowledge of the heart through stuff I'd done at college, so I knew things about the heart, but didn't know anything about that. Anyway, massive shock. They told us a little bit about it, but basically said we'd need to go and go to a fetal specialist and get the full scan and full confirmation of the diagnosis of what they suspected. So anyway, massive shock, went home, went to my mum, very upset, lots of tears, but I'm kind of one of those people that's quite pragmatic, so I just kind of thought, well, I was very upset and very shocked, but at the same time, there's nothing I could do, so just kind of waited for the next day. Managed to get an appointment the very next day at the specialist hospital. Went to see the fetal cardiologist, who confirmed that it was the diagnosis, and that your left ventricle and its associated attachments had not grown properly, was small, and we were given the three options, which was a medical termination, or home care, where you didn't take the surgical route, you continued with the pregnancy, had your baby, and took your baby home, and just cared for the baby for as long as they lived for. And then obviously the surgical route, which we opted for. I don't think I ever had any other idea in my head of taking any other route, kind of, unless there'd been something even more catastrophically wrong with you, because we were warned there could be a genetic abnormality which was not really compatible with life, in which case I think the termination option would have been something I would have had to have taken after the diagnosis. Anyway, so I had an amniocentesis that day, and we were told we would get the quick result in about 2 weeks, and then the longer result would take 4 to 6 weeks.
Wow, that's a long time.
So it was a lot to take in, but I think unless something even more awful was diagnosed, I was pretty sure the route I was going to take anyway. So waited for the quick one, which came through on New Year's Eve 2001. So we went down the pub. Obviously wasn't drinking, but because it was New Year's Eve, went down to the pub to have a little sober celebration. And obviously I was showing by then, so that was tough because, you know, lots of people knew about the pregnancy at that point. There was lots of, you know, congratulations, when's it due, do you know what it is? I wish we had found out. We found out we were having a girl. And that was tough, really tough, because we literally told family members and that's it. We didn't tell anyone else at all for quite a while. And then I got a phone call while we were at the pub from the specialist on New Year's Eve, bless them, you'd think they would be off, and saying that there was no additional chromosome abnormalities and it was just the heart defect. And it was like we wanted to throw a big party because all you had wrong was part of your heart hadn't grown as opposed to anything else. So that was it really. From then on for the rest of the pregnancy, it was lots and lots of scans, lots of growth scans. We went and visited the specialist hospital that your surgery would be taking place at, and we just sort of got on with the pregnancy then after that. I was reasonably assured that all the time you were inside you would remain well, and that was a relief. But it was a tough pregnancy after that because we didn't want to buy anything. We used to go to the shops and come back and not buy anything. Multiple times we'd go to the shops and come back with nothing. And then there was a bit of a sort of morbid phase, I suppose everyone goes through after they've had the initial shock, where I would wonder what outfit we would be burying you in. That was a pretty horrible time, having that idea in my head a lot, you know. And that was it really, right up until I was induced at 39 weeks plus 5 days. So it was all planned. They induced me on the day at my local hospital, and you were due to be transferred as long as you came out and everything was stable and nothing too emergency needed to happen immediately. The plan was to transfer you up to the specialist heart unit to be assessed for your first surgery. We had all the information by then. We'd already been up to the hospital, we'd met the surgeon, birthing plan was in place, aftercare was in place. Just have to wait for you to be born, really.
What was the birth like?
So we went into hospital on a Monday at something hideous like 7 o'clock in the morning. Barely slept the night before, obviously heavily pregnant, not the best time to get restful night's sleep anyway. So I got to the hospital. We were just put on a normal ward with other pregnant women and put on the monitor, and they decided that I had actually gone into spontaneous labour that morning, although I didn't even know it. I just thought I was having Braxton Hicks. But they still wanted to break my waters because they didn't want the labour to go on and on and on. First babies can take a long time to arrive, and they didn't want that to happen. They didn't want the labour to be long because of strain on the baby. But they also wanted the baby born naturally, if possible, because it's better for the baby's lungs to be born that way rather than by caesarean if possible. And there was no reason for me at this point to have a caesarean, but obviously that was an emergency option if things suddenly went wrong. And they took me, when I'd got to a certain amount of centimetres, they took me round to the delivery suite. I did end up having an epidural because it was quite painful, and that slowed my labour down. I was on this drug called syntocin, which makes the contractions really strong, and that wasn't very nice, I have to say. So I did end up having an epidural because I couldn't have the pethidine because it can make the baby drowsy, and that wasn't an option. So it was either Gatinair or epidural. That was it. Then you were born at 12 minutes past 6 in the evening. It was all a bit crazy. There were a lot of people in the room, which was not very nice for a first baby. There seemed to be a revolving door on my delivery suite. It was just opening and closing the whole time. There was a full paediatric crash team. Because they knew it was an unusual birth, they had a trainee midwife with a senior midwife. They had a trainee anaesthetist and a senior anaesthetist. They had a senior obstetrician who actually delivered you in the end, and my mum, and of course your father. And yeah, it was quite crowded in there in the end. And you came out and there wasn't a noise, so that was a bit scary. And I think they did a ventouse on the end. I think I was a bit out of it really towards the end, but I think some alarms or something started going off, or they were monitoring very closely, but I wasn't overly aware of it. And all of a sudden they decided that you needed to come out, so on went the ventouse cup. They kind of sort of yanked you out a bit, and then there was a cry eventually. They literally showed me your little face and then whisked you straight over to the paediatric team, who checked you out and came out looking quite normal really. Babies usually come out with all the gunk and looking a bit bluey anyway when they come out. So they then wrapped you in a blanket, and you were reasonably stable to start with, so we were able to have a little bit of cuddle time, not too much, and then they took you down to the special care unit that they have in the local hospital. You were being transferred that night. We knew that was going to happen. They had a bed ready for you at the specialist unit, and an ambulance with all the staff that they needed were coming down from the unit to collect you and take you back up there. Because of the birth I had, and I suffered postpartum hemorrhaging after I'd given birth, so I wasn't allowed to leave. Quite frankly, I couldn't stand up, so that wasn't going to happen anyway. So sadly, they transferred you that late that night, about 11 o'clock that night. They took you off to the specialist hospital, and I had to stay behind at my local hospital until the next morning. And that's it really, until I was able to speak to them. So I think the nurses from the specialist hospital rang to say what sort of night you'd had, and that was it. I discharged myself the next morning. I wasn't really in a fit state to leave the hospital, but I wasn't going to stay there any longer anyway, so went back to where we lived, picked up our suitcases and what have you, but they were already packed, and then went off to the specialist hospital, which was only about, I don't know, depends on the traffic, about 45 minutes to an hour away by car. And so we were able to get up there and see you on the Tuesday, by which time you'd been intubated and knocked out because you weren't really cooperating. You were setting all the alarms off and what have you, and I got onto the ward to see you, so you were already unconscious, couldn't see your eyes or anything, you were knocked out, and you had a breathing tube, but you looked stable enough, and we spoke to the consultant, and the nurses were very sweet. They'd already done handprints and footprints of you, just in case. And that was the Tuesday. So Tuesday evening, we then fortunately were able to stay in a room on the top floor of the hospital. So we were only 2 floors above you. So we used to come down in the mornings, our dressing gown and slippers, to see you first thing, usually about 7 o'clock. The nurses would be beginning their handover ready for 8 o'clock for the shift swap. And we got down that morning, and the consultant was there, and the surgeon was there, and they said that you were a good size, you were 8.5 pounds, big baby, and they said that they wanted to do your first operation that day, so you were about 36 hours old. So they quickly rallied the hospital chaplain, got you christened, and basically that was it. They wanted to go down, they wanted to operate while you were stable. They didn't want to wait until you started to become poorly before they did it. So that was it, you went down. I can't remember the exact time, but it was early in the morning. It was about by 9 o'clock or something. You'd gone down, and we didn't see you again for about 12 hours. But it all went really well as they'd hoped. You came back up, bit puffy, a lot puffy. Your neck was all swollen and your chest was open. So I had a big bandage over your chest that says chest open. And there were sort of lots of beeping and wires and tubes and I don't know. Again, I'm quite a pragmatic sort of person. It wasn't an option. You had to have it done. So for me, it wasn't really about a decision. It was just getting through it, actually.
Thank you for watching this video. Please feel free to subscribe, like, comment down below if there's any other questions you want me or my mum to answer. She has actually agreed to be in some videos finally. And if you want to hear about any of my surgery stories, I will make those videos. I actually don't really remember any of them, so it'll probably be my mum again. But yeah, thank you for watching this video. Bye.